One of the many scams ripping off Australian taxpayers at the moment is what's known as the Great Sinking Island scam, under the name of course, climate change, that these Pacific islands are supposedly sinking and need Australian taxpayers' money. And so we have Australian politicians that love to go on these junkets to these Pacific islands and get dressed up in the usual gear, the Hawaiian shirts and the leis and the pearl necklaces, parade around these Pacific islands, handing these islanders tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of Australian taxpayers' money in the name of climate change to try and supposedly stop these islands going under because of sea level rises. And of course the islanders are no fools. They play their parts. They welcome these dumb Australian politicians travelling over there and help them play dress up and gladly take the cash from the Australian taxpayer. Well, the whole thing is a complete and utter hoax. I called this out over 6 years ago, and even the ABC was stunned to see that I was actually 100% correct when I said these islands weren't sinking, they were actually growing in size. Now, the comments I did back in 2018 were based on a published paper by researchers out of the University of Auckland. It was titled Patterns of Island Change and Persistence Offer Alternative Adaptation Pathways for Atoll Nations. And in this study, they looked at the atoll island of Tuvalu, which is made up of 101 separate small islands. And they found by looking at the satellite data going back over 50 years, that rather than going under and shrinking in size, Tuvalu had actually increased in size by 73.5 hectares, or 2.9% of its size. So here we have the peer-reviewed science saying Tuvalu was getting larger in size. It had grown 73 hectares, and yet we have these Australian politicians handing out Australian taxpayers' money on the basis these islands are going under because of rising sea levels caused by climate change. The whole thing, as I said, is a complete and utter scam. But now we've even got some more later data on this to even prove what a greater scam it is across the entire Pacific. A new paper published only in October of 2024 by researchers out of the National University of Singapore and Auckland University. Now, in this study, they looked at no less than 509 of these atoll islands. And across the board, they found rather than shrinking and going under, as the climate alarmists and those that follow the prophecies of Greta believe, these islands in aggregate had actually increased in size 443 hectares in total over the past half a century. That's what the satellite images show. Now, not all islands are the same. These islands we know they're dynamic in shape and in size. It found that of the 42 atolls, looking totals, remember those 42 atolls are made up of 509 atoll islands. They found of those 42, 8 atolls, 19%, had a net loss in land area, but 34 of them had a net increase. So 84% of these atolls have had a net increase in size over the last 50 years. And yet here we are, as Australian taxpayers, having our politicians wandering over to these Pacific islands, handing them over millions of dollars of Australian taxpayers' money on the basis that these islands are going under. The whole thing is a complete and absolute scam being funded by Australian taxpayers. And it's not only in the Pacific that this scam is going on. It's also in the Indian Ocean, especially in the Maldives. Now, back in 1988, no less than the Canberra Times reported, and we'll read it here from this article, that they said that the Maldives was going under. Here we have it here, AFP Canberra Times, Monday the 26th of September 1988, threat to islands. The Maldives. A gradual rise in average sea level is threatening to completely cover this Indian Ocean nation of 1,196 small islands within the next 30 years, according to authorities. The Environmental Affairs Director said an estimated rise of 20 to 30 centimetres in the next 20 to 40 years would be catastrophic for most of the islands, which are no more than a metre above sea level. Well, fast forward to 2025. Remember, 30 years ago, so back in 2018, according to the Canberra Times, the entire Maldives should have been underwater. But here we are, just have a look at this, some advertising of the new resorts being opened in the Maldives in 2025, just to see the investment that is pouring into this place. Firstly, you've got just a couple of these places. Just have a look at some of these images here of these new resorts opening in the Maldives. The Centra Grand Lagoon in Maldives, due to open in February 2025, with 142 villas. The Elmara, Maldives, a $218 million US resort with 150 villas. It's due to open in 2025. The Mandarin Oriental, with 120 villas, also due to open 2025. The Corinthia, Maldives, another resort with 73 villas, also for 2025. And the Namos Resort in the Maldives, also due to open in 2025. Now, these companies are not going to tip in hundreds of millions of dollars into these resorts if the places are going to go under in a few years. And the thing is, to start these resorts is thousands of dollars a night. The average Australian will never be able to afford to stay in these resorts. You have to be like on the inside, one of the global elites, probably selling wind turbines or solar panels to get the money to go and stay in one of these resorts. This sinking islands scam needs to be called out for what it is. Yes, we should be helping our Pacific Island neighbours, but not under the guise of the islands are going under. This does these islanders detrimental harm. It tells them they have no future. It is just a complete scam. And for anyone that is really concerned about rising sea levels, I suggest firstly you maybe go down to Fort Denison on Sydney Harbour and have a look at the tide gauges there. The other place you could take yourself down this summer is go down to Bondi Beach and have a look and compare the surf line at Bondi Beach today against these old historic pictures, and you'll realise this rising sea level, this sinking islands is just a complete scam that is robbing Australian taxpayers, and we need politicians in Canberra that are brave enough to call it out and put an end to this waste and this money being sent offshore.